When the Underworld wave first broke across my desk, part of the pitch was that there was a series of stories here. Now we're actually in the backstory. The backstory is the forestory.
It was in the first script, and it was always, that was Len's design from the beginning.
In the original film, there were genetic memories, and the genetic memories talked of the time when Lucian was in love with Victor's daughter, Sonia.
For Sonia and those things you discover in the first movie, so clearly it was already all set up.
This is the original forbidden relationship. This is the one that started the war in the first place.
And of course it is forbidden love, they're star-crossed lovers. It is like Romeo and Juliet.
Extreme Romeo and Juliet.
Lucian is a very powerful slave and has athletic and fighting skills that the other humans don't have. And he and Sonia were both children together, and she always sort of admired his physical prowess, and as they became adults, admired him more.
You realize they've been having an experience for a long time. So we never quite see the very first time they meet, but we are jumping into their relationship when the movie started.
There's been an attraction there, something pulling them together. This is not something that either of them ever planned for, and in fact, for Lucian, it completely gets in the way of what he wants to do. He ultimately wants to be able to get out of this place.
It was a bit of a sort of love at first sight across a courtyard. The reason why the relationship between Lucian and Sonia has to remain so hush-hush is because the consequences are fatal.
The dilemma for them is basically Lucian needs to escape one day. This is his primary mission in his life, is to escape and free all those Lycans. Yet he doesn't want to do that and lose her. So this is where the whole conflict of the movie happens. Is she going to come with him? She wants to be with him. She doesn't want to bring him at risk. And you have this kind of very tortured relationship and situation that creates basically the tension in the movie.
There's a lot of things that they don't really want to focus on because of this relationship. And I think one of those is probably how far Victor will go to stop it. It gives a certain, I suppose, excitement and danger to it as well.
So you want me to stay here for you? Like this, like an animal?
Lucian.
Any other species being co-joined sexually with a vampire would profoundly disturb him. The fact that it's a werewolf makes it inexpressibly terrible. The fact that it's his daughter makes it enough to have his head explode. It's the single worst thing that could possibly occur in Victor's world.
I got you!
I love him.
Oh! You have betrayed me! To be with an animal!
The birth of Lucian marked the creation of a different race.
Lucian in some ways is an aberration, is a creature that comes out of nowhere almost. This female werewolf gives birth to a child that looks human. We don't tell the story of what happened before, but this is something that's never happened. That kid obviously doesn't become a true human being, he becomes what we call a Lycan.
What do you think, son? Shall we make more?
Of him?
Like him?
He's the first of that kind, and he becomes the master leader of the Lycan clan.
A man once bitten by a werewolf turned into a werewolf and never changes into a human until he's killed. Lycans have the ability to change. The Lycan is a different being.
He was used to create the whole Lycan race, which was brought into being by Victor as slaves, as the labor class of the vampire world. They're also immortal, but they are not as cultured, and they're not as high status as the vampires are.
Those creatures can be actually handled by keeping them away from transforming, by having those colors they wear with silver. As soon as the contact of the silver goes with the skin of a Lycan turning, brings him back to the human state.
Those humans become the slave, and they're controlled that way by Victor.
Lucian is someone who, doesn't like seeing the other Lycans acting like animals. He wants to be more than that. And that's, I suppose, there's a kind of an envy of the vampires, an envy of their elegance and sophistication and non-animal likeness.
He hates the werewolf for what they made him be. And he's also feeling very responsible for all those Lycans creatures that he has created even not with his own will, but he feels very, very distressed by that. That first mission that he has, I believe, as he's growing up, is to free those people.
That moment when Lucian turns into a wolf in front of them, the werewolves are cowed by this. It actually turns out to be a pivotal moment, because that's the moment when Lucian also recognizes that these werewolves, these creatures that he has hunted and killed his entire life, actually may have more in common with him than his ostensible masters, the vampires. And of course, as the story progresses, that bond becomes stronger and stronger, and in the end, that becomes a huge factor in what allows Lucian to finally triumph.
So it gave us a chance to create yet a fresher, new character for this one.
In our story, unbeknownst to Lucian, Victor killed his mother and then keeps Lucian in the castle. So Lucian has to grow up with the man who killed his mother. But now he doesn't know that happened. But nevertheless, he has to grow up with the man who keeps him ultimately a slave and a captive. So that relationship, I think, is a very interesting one, that Lucian has learned to bide his time, keep quiet, keep his head down, and yet there is obviously this unique relationship between him and Victor.
You are a credit to your race. Do you know how to remain so? Keep your eyes on the ground.
He has an enthusiasm for Lucian as a weapon. There is also a suggestion that Victor, apart from all of that, makes a kind of connection with Lucian, that he has a sentimental connection with him.
You have stung me, Lycan, with your betrayal.
Ironically, both of the main characters of this film died in the first Underworld. It's a unique challenge to bring back two characters who have died publicly. Lucian started off being the bad guy, and you realize 3/4 of the way through the film, actually, no, he's not the bad guy. He's actually kind of the good guy. And it's Victor, who you thought all along was sort of the patriarchal protector of the vampires. He's the one that ended up being the bad guy.
It was fantastic bringing back the cast members, and actually Underworld 3 offers the most dynamic roles for both Michael Sheen and Bill Nye.
To be able to get Bill back, and Kevin and Michael and Stephen McIntosh, and that was really exciting to me.
It was already some sort of we're part of the family. And our first encounter after all these years was very, very pleasant. They were very open-minded and very interested, it felt, to have someone like me be part of the new project. I knew those people would deliver the performance, and that was the one thing that was in my mind, was like, okay, I've got that. As soon as the story was created, the studio went to Michael, because obviously there was no way to do this movie without him.
There. Oh, no, there. I don't know what that's been like.
Bring so much passion that it burst out on screen. I had to put Michael in a place where he was fitting, he could give me everything. It's about letting them breathe, and then when they come to you, say, I loved it, this, that. And that was how I work.
He has thought through the motivations and the obstacles that this character has to overcome very thoroughly. And he is treating the character of Lucian with the exact same amount of sincerity and commitment that he would have any other role.
He really buffed up for this film, as theater actors do. When they take a job, they take it very seriously. And he took training and weightlifting and exercise really seriously. So there are moments in this movie where you see him, you know, with his shirt off and this torso that is fantastic.
It's obviously involved a fair amount of work on my part to try and get into some sort of shape that, you know, I can convince people that I'm as young or younger than I was in the first film. But also just a sort of a fascinating puzzle in a way, in that you start to find interesting ways of showing how he got to be who he is, and that's one of the most exciting things about the film for me, is putting that together in a way that hopefully is not obvious, and at the same time is not just a sort of intellectual exercise, that it's something that an audience can relate to emotionally as well.
We had to actually think of a way to figure out what the character was at the roots of its life, you know, and that was interesting, the reinvention.
In order for him to become a leader and to fulfill his destiny, he has to accept something about himself that he has been fighting against all his life. And for me, that was the element of the story that most interested me, and I think is one that allows hopefully will allow an audience to empathise with what is going on and take it sort of slightly further than just a kind of epic, myth-like story. By the end of the film, he's achieved a victory, but he's also lost something very precious to him. And so he's a sort of in some ways he's a very melancholy figure, Lucian.
Bill is fantastic to work with. Now you get to see why he was the type of character that he was in #1.
It's very cool to play Victor because he's a vampire, and all vampires are, by dint of being a vampire, they are cool. And Victor, being senior vampire, is cool and has rank and power. I love all that stuff. I love it when it gets vampire technical. I love it when they discuss harnessing daylight in bullet form. I love to see a vampire sipping blood in a sophisticated manner. I like the whole dynamic of that stuff.
Is this kind of like continuous character that never changed through the ages. Bill knows the character and you just let him bring it out. He's created this character that's slightly on the edge of almost theatrical, almost Grand Guignol sometimes. But he's just always on that edge. There is a father side of Victor in his story. In a sense, he had more of an opportunity to develop his character and again create an arc that's a bit bigger than what we had seen in the first one.
I'm very pleased that we went back in time for this one. Victor's relationship with Sonia is about as close as normal as he gets, as he admires her as a warrior, as a fighter, as a creature, as a vampire, as much as his flesh and blood.
His daughter was the first really independent, fearless vampire.
It's a pretty powerful and important connection. He is apparently in two minds about some of the stuff that he gets up to. He mightily adores her. And he despairs of her, obviously, finally. I mean, this is a man who drinks his daughter's blood and then arranges for her to be burnt to toast. So, you know, it's not a normal day in family life. They are fantastical things to play.
In case it had escaped your notice, Blacksmith, I am quite capable of looking after myself. I met with Gary Lucchese at Lakeshore, who's a very integral man, and respected his taste and his idea of what he wanted to do with the third. I understood that, in fact, it was a prequel, and it was a complete departure, really, stylistically and in the character specifically.
Rona Mitra's a wonderful woman. She's very bright, very strong, very sexy, has sort of a sassiness to her, which works very well because, this is a woman who even her father, Victor, who's the strongest vampire around, can't seem to control her.
How you would act as a human and sort of disconnecting and disengaging that chip is interesting, but still being an emotional female, because I didn't want her to be cold, and she's not cold, but vampires can be. So it's just, getting that blend of stuff right.
She brought a very primeval warrior in the character. Whatever beautiful she is, she also had this very strong warrior sense. She's very, very tough. We love to see a warrior female fighting, but also to relate to the character, you need to feel that those people have the same emotion than you do. I think there's a lot of that in Sonia in the movie, and I think in that sense, it's a very interesting character.
Everything's interesting about it. Creating the look was such a fundamental part of actually becoming the character that really I had to say that I made sure that was one place that I really tried to have a big say in.
It's nice now to actually go back and look at her as a character, as a person with emotions and skills and weaknesses and all the things that draw you to a character. The Ray's character also died in Underworld, and here he is back again. So we've been doing a lot of resurrecting.
It is finished!
When we were developing the original story, we had ideas of Ray's and Lucian meeting up way back when. and that Reyes was somebody that Lucian trusted.
We see him at the beginning as a slave, and so you see the original Reyes. He's lost in a world that's not his world until he becomes a creature himself.
I created Reyes to be Lucian's right-hand man from the first film. Even though I'm playing a massive man, an enforcer, a kind of tough guy, you have to cook it down some, and you have to be willing to bring those quieter moments. Being kind of a big guy, it's always good to get in there and, rough and tumble. So in doing that, I've had a lot of fun. Bam. Bam.
He looks fantastic on screen, and the way I reveal him in a movie, I try to just do that thing where there's a moment where people don't know fully that's him, and then he reveals himself.
Humans upset. Tanis, please, take a note of what pain that brings me.
Tanis is the most Machiavellian of the characters. He's playing both sides.
Would your father welcome the man who brought him news that his beloved daughter was consorting with a Lycan?
Tanis was recreated for the script. The first draft didn't have it, and at the time we weren't quite sure if we could get him back. And I remember the day I heard he was available and we could have him. It was a real treat, because I really, really like him.
He's Victor's eyes and ears, really. Tanis is very closely allied with Victor, not because necessarily he likes him a lot, but because he's terrified of him. On any given day, Tanis could feel like, even though he's his right-hand man, this could be one slip and this could be the day that I die. So this opportunity that arises in this film, information suddenly becomes power. And so it's like, well, now I can maybe use this and give myself some more status and maneuverability, and maybe get a little higher up the chain of command and possibly survive longer.
For Steven, it is totally a reinvention. And what's great about him is you realize how much, as an actor, he can depict, even within the same character, show you a totally different thing.
Careful, blacksmith, lest your eyes betray your secret.
Everybody opened the door for me to put my vision out there. Actually, the same way, on my end, I just made sure that they could bring the character they wanted to bring.
A miracle, Father. A union of the bloodlines.
I curse the day your mother gave her life to bring you into this world.
That thing inside you is a monstrosity.
All the elements are in place. These movies look tremendous, and they look satisfyingly original. They don't quite look like anything else.
We take it back into a period, which is sort of ambiguous, really, and that's the wonderful freedom you have in this world and in this genre. There's a story which hasn't been told in the other two, which is this really core love story.
The tone of Underworld 3 is very much of Romeo and Juliet social difference. I've always created those barriers that people are fighting against all the time. It's a very classic theme, and that's great because it's eternal.
Performances are very strong, the visual look is very strong, the world of the piece is very strong. In some ways, the first two films only just touched upon the surface of what these films can be, and I think this film is now sort of showing a bit more of what's underneath, and a bit more delving into the history of it and showing the scope of it.
The history has always been a driving force of Underworld 1 and 2, and we've had glimpses going back in and seeing how it all started. Now to be able to actually play it out and see it, I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
It's an exciting story of a quest for freedom.
Illicit love stories, I think always sort of work.
It is a creature movie, it is a battle movie, it is a fighting movie, there's a lot of action, but I also felt there was some really charged emotional moment between those two characters.
There's no process of finding out the past through this film. This is the story itself.
It is finished.
No. This is just the beginning.